y'all. I am back with another book tag, and this one I've been meaning to do for a while. This was introduced and created back in September by a man with a hat who reads, and I just haven't had a chance. Obviously haven't been around as much, and also this is a little tougher for me because I don't read a ton of science fiction, but I really, I had promised I would try it because I know he'd recently created it, and so I wanted to do so. So I'll also tag his video so you can see the original. But this is the sci-fi movie book tag. So there are 7 prompts, and as always, I'm not going to necessarily tag anyone in particular, but tag yourself. That's the goal. So I'm going to go through them, and we'll go from there. All right, so number 1 is, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I have the right stuff. All right, number 1 is Welcome to Earth, Independence Day. Great movie. And so this is a book about an alien invasion. And so I was really struggling with that for a little while, and then I realized, actually, I love a book that's about alien invasions, and it is The Host by Stephanie Meyer. And this is actually a really surprising book for me to love because I am not a Twilight fan, and anyone who knows me knows very well I'm not a Twilight fan. And I'm not going to bash Twilight because, there's things I don't like about it, but I think anything that can inspire the passion for reading that the Twilight series did for a lot of people is a good thing. But, I just really did not like the books, and so when a friend of mine recommended it, she was doing like a list of recommendations, and she mentioned it, and I was like, I'm not going to read anything by Stephanie Meyer. I'm not going to like it. And, she was like, there is a romance element. So it really was not something I thought I would like. But basically, it's a story of this sort of alien population that are parasites, basically. They're not big enough to function. So they come to Earth, and to thrive, they have to attach themselves to a host. And so this is basically, there's this war. There's the war between these aliens and the people. And then people don't know who's real and who's a parasite and who's kind of been invaded, who is a host. And so this essentially host becomes part of this group of people who are this resistance. She falls in love with one of them, only to discover that in reality she is a host. And so it's a little bit of a question of, are our feelings and our memories and our experiences ours? Because the person who's trapped in the body, the actual host, her memories are still there. And so, but then this alien is also feeling these things. And it's just it's not a super groundbreaking plot. I mean, it's been done for years in science fiction movies and in science fiction novels. But I really thought it was actually really well written. I liked it. Is it well written in terms of, literary classics? I don't know, but I enjoyed the hell out of the book. And so I really liked it. And if you haven't read it, especially if you're like putting it, oh, I don't like Twilight. I would say, if the plot sounds interesting, give it a chance because I'm not, like I said, I'm really not a Twilight fan, and I really enjoyed it. So I think, there's always something, people try new things. So try something else. So the next one is Life Finds a Way from Jurassic Park. Also an amazing movie. Really weird movie. And this is a novel where science runs amok, and I could have just used Jurassic Park, I guess. Jurassic Park really surprised me, too, because I did not want to go see that when it came out, and my parents wanted to go on, family night, and, I was a teenager, so I was like, I don't want to go to the movies with my parents, and I don't want to see this dorky family movie. I don't know what I wanted to see. Probably Indecent Proposal for the 35th time, because for some reason that summer I think that was that summer, and I just kept seeing that movie. But I had to go because, I was not driving, so basically it was go or, sit at home. And so I went, and I was just typical teenager, right? So I was like moody and I didn't want to be there. But I really loved that movie, and I still love that movie. So anyway, this is where science runs amok. So I'm going with Foe by Ian Reid, and I don't want to go into too much detail because, like anything with Ian Reid's, his books are a little hard to kind of categorize. And this is his other two are more horror, psychological horror thriller. But Foe is a little more science fiction, but also very psychological and character driven. But I think it kind of reminds me a lot of a Black Mirror episode. Are there certain things that science could maybe eventually do, and just because they can, should they? And I mean, I think that's always the question in most science fiction, right? Like that's one of the most common science fiction themes. It's just because you can, should you? So this isn't like over the top science. Like I said, I don't read a ton of science fiction, but it does ask that question: is like, at what point, does science try to sort of take over things that maybe it shouldn't? So the next one is a dystopian novel, and it's May the Odds Be Ever in Your Favor from Hunger Games. And again, I'm not going to use Hunger Games. And I debated on this a lot because I love dystopian books, and a lot of like the dystopian stuff I read has been YA or, and obviously the classics. And I was like, should I go with like the traditional dystopian? And I decided I would because, a lot of times when people think dystopian, they think Fahrenheit 451, they think obviously 1984. But even when I was like reading them in school, my favorite has always been Brave New World. And I actually think Brave New World is probably, Fahrenheit 451 is fairly close to our society today in a lot of ways as well. Yeah, that one's very close. Obviously, except for having the firemen coming and like taking and burning books. But Brave New World, I always thought, when I first read this, I was like, this is basically our society, just with like a few little bits of science. Because instead of being, like the restrictive society of 1984, and obviously there are similarities to our society with 1984 and with Fahrenheit 451, but those are really a lot more about being in a restrictive society that kind of tells you what you can and can't do, what you can and can't think. Brave New World, on the other hand, like, is all about pursuing hedonistic pleasure at all costs, if you're within like a certain like class structure. So there's a kind of status structure hierarchy that but the top groups basically, at all costs, the most important thing is pleasure. And so you should never feel sad, and so people are basically drugged up, just trying to, on like antidepressants, trying to stay happy, pursue happiness at all costs because you don't want to think. And so I always felt like this was way more likely, just because I do think, if you have a society like 1984 or Fahrenheit 451 or, Hunger Games, I always think, if the government gets very, very powerful and very, very restrictive, there's generally going to be people who fight back. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, and I'm not saying, it would work, and I'm not saying we could overthrow, the government if they got that out of control, but I do think that there's a resistance generally to being told what to do. But on the other hand, if you were told, do whatever you want, as long as you don't think too much and stay happy, I feel like that's pretty much like already our society. So Brave New World never felt like too unrealistic to me. I thought it was just kind of an over-the-top look at like capitalism and hedonism and also sort of like class structure. But it's also very much about like the future of work and, people being in their place and some people having certain roles. And I don't know, it just felt, even in like when I was in high school, I was just like, yeah, this is not that far off, like really from our future. So the next one, obviously from Star Wars, These Aren't the Droids You're Looking For. And so it's a book about robots. And I'm going with Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And I know there's a big debate. Are androids and robots the same? And I know they're not technically, but it's the same basic, like, technology, but obviously androids are supposed to be more human-like, not be, as robotic. But I always just kind of feel like androids are just sort of more advanced robots. And one of the things I always loved about this book, and if you don't know, this is the book that's the basis of Blade Runner is based on this book. And like what I always loved about this book is like anything, as you can see, I don't like a lot of science fiction. It's not that I don't like it. I don't read a lot of science fiction. So when I do go for science fiction, I always want the ones that are a little bit more like social commentary, moral commentary, discussion of what defines humanity, what defines like being human. And those are the themes I tend to go for when I go for something that's science fiction. So, it's not that it's not that I don't like sci-fi, and I actually really love sci-fi movies. It's just, for some reason, like, I don't tend to read for escapism, I think, is part of the problem, is like, it's not that I don't want to escape, but I like books that have some foundation in reality, whether it's mysteries and thrillers, sci-fi, horror. I like them to kind of give me, if not, I don't want to say answers to life, but I like them to kind of deal with sort of social and not emotional, but like human issues. And so I don't like things that are so far from reality, because I tend to feel like when I'm reading something and it's like just set in this other world, or it's like set on Mars and, it's not really much like our society, I feel like it gets too far away for like there to be any kind of, and I'm not saying this, anybody has to agree with this or feel this way, but for me, I feel like I like books that I walk away from and feel like I've like gained understanding about life in general or about myself. And I just think it's harder for me to do that when they're so alien to my own existence. And again, that doesn't mean it has to be my life experience or my experience, but just human experiences. And so sometimes I feel like when they get way out there in fantasy and sci-fi, they just are too far from reality that I just kind of zone out and don't connect to it. So the next one, I'm not sure how to say this, Klaatu, Barada, Nikto. And this is from The Day the Earth Stood Still. And this is a novel where immortality and or resurrection plays a part. So I'm going with a little bit, this may be a bit of a spoiler, not too much, because I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I am going to go with a book that is essentially a locked room murder mystery. It's not technically a locked room, but basically a locked room murder mystery. Classic sort of Agatha Christie, old British manor, kind of thing, that has a bit of a twist. And I don't mean a twist in terms of the mystery. It's a little more than you think it is. And so I'm going to go with the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, which I absolutely loved. And this book, and I mentioned this in my top 100, this is in my top 20. What I really loved about this book is, I love this kind of mystery to begin with. It's a manor, there's a bunch of suspects, you're getting to meet all the suspects, there's a crime, pretty traditional. However, it's got like a Groundhog Day thing. So essentially, the detective is a person who is being sort of reincarnated at the end of each night. Sorry, it's actually my birthday, and I'm recording this, and Sir Chunk has already gone to bed, and he just wanted to call down because it just hit midnight. So anyway, so I'm recording this. So 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. It's this, so they're basically this character, this detective, is being reincarnated in and out of a new suspect every single day and reliving these events. And because she is only getting some perspective, it's only whoever, they're in, whoever's body they're possessing that day, they're only getting a piece of the story. But so the idea is that over the course of a week, you would be able to piece together enough that you've now experienced this event from 7 different perspectives, 7 different suspects, or people who are there. So with all that information, could you solve this crime? So, I mean, conceptually, it was just super interesting anyway. And there's just, like I said, it has a little bit of I don't want to call it like a twist. It's more of like a genre-bending kind of moment, series of moments that I really, really loved. So, and I could see it being the kind of thing that a lot of people might hate because, you know, if you're a traditional mystery reader, you might be like, what is this? And if, you know, you're not a traditional mystery reader, you might be annoyed just because you thought you were getting a traditional mystery. But anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. And I liked it. So, but I do think this is probably a book that is best if you are open to a lot of genres, because there's definitely some elements that might kind of shake up that traditional genre. So the next one is E.T. Phone Home, which obviously is from E.T. And this is a novel about space travel. So I'm going with another YA book, and this is Illuminae. And I just loved this book. This is a big chunkin' book. It is about space travel, people in space, but it's epistolary, so it's just really fun because, you know, it's like the logs on the spaceship, it's emails back and forth, it's like text sort of messages, there's logs, and then there's different like computer documents. So it's called like the Illuminae Files. And so I really, really enjoyed this book. I love that kind of book anyway. I'm really a big fan of epistolary writing, and I don't think enough books do it. It's just, you know, it's like I like the traditional epistolary, your Dracula, little, Frankenstein to a degree. Frankenstein's kind of like a frame epistolary novel. But I do like that sort of style because I like how it's kind of like when you watch like horror movies and the found footage horror movie, it's not real, but it's just the idea that like it feels sort of real. And I just like that. I like that it kind of feels like it taps into our natural human instinct of being a little bit of voyeurs, like you're kind of reading other people's mail. You're reading people's diaries. You just, it's that, I think that we have that natural instinct to want to do that. And like, I don't really want to invade actual people's privacy, and I don't want to watch actual people's like videos or, and especially some of the new ones like Searching, where they actually use social media and stuff. Like, I don't want to really invade somebody's texts or social media content. But I do think it's just kind of fun when you're reading it in a story or watching it in a movie, because it just feels like, you're getting a little bit of that natural, like, interest in kind of seeing people's secrets play out without sort of, it actually being invasive. And the next one is I'll Be Back, which is obviously Terminator. And this is a book about time travel. And so I'm going with one I read this year, and this was one of the more recent reads I have, and this was one of my few 5-star in the last few months. And this is How You Lose the Time War. And I'm going to be completely honest about this book. I even said it at the time. I'm not sure I'm smart enough to even know what was going on in this book, but I loved it. Like, I was just so invested in it. It is a romance, and like, this is how you do romance for me, because it's all letters. It's basically these two soldiers, these two women who are on the opposite side of this time war, and essentially these two armies. And so one is sort of the more tech army, and they're, trying to go back through points in history and sort of automate and add technology and kind of get people on board with the technology. And then there's the sort of the resistance, I guess, which would be like the natural people, and they want to stop the technology, and they want to destroy all the technology, and get people to stop being so dependent on technology. And so as they kind of chase each other through time, these two women met once in a battle, essentially, and now they're kind of following each other through time and leaving each other letters at points in this time war, on this timeline. And time travel confuses the hell out of me. Like, I try not to think too much about it because, like, I'm watching Loki and, and I'm, like, I love Doctor Who. I'm actually, like, several seasons behind on Doctor Who, so please no spoilers on that. Like, I have only watched, I think, the first season with the 13th, 14th, the girl, Jodie, I can't remember her last name. I want to say Jodie Benson, but that's the Little Mermaid. I really love her. I loved her in Broadchurch, too. But anyway, I'm behind. But so the thing is, like, I try not to think too much about it because if I start trying to, like, make sense of the rules of time travel and how things can work, I just get a headache because, like, it's so paradoxical. That's, like, its whole thing. And so part of it is, like, that was what I did here. I was like, this war is very confusing to me, and so I'm not totally sure I got all of those pieces, and I almost feel like it doesn't matter. Because I was really just like, I'm just going to invest myself in this relationship and, like, the letters they're writing, because that was just really intriguing to me, and I don't necessarily know if I got every piece of it, but it's okay, because I feel like I just enjoyed the story a lot. So, yeah, so those are my picks. I'm curious if you've read any of these books, if any of these books interest you. If you are a sci-fi reader, especially, based on kind of these types of books, because this is probably, like, as sci-fi as I get, so let me know if there are other books that I should be reading, because I know, like, everybody will always recommend certain sci-fi authors and stuff, and I've read I, Robot, and I've read, I have the Foundation trilogy, but I haven't read it. I've read Dune, although a very long time ago, so I rebought it because I was thinking I would reread it again. I've read all, like, obviously I've read Bradbury, so I like, and I like the classic sci-fi, but I'm not, like I said, this is not my genre, so if there are things that I should know about, I want to know. So, I know people are really passionate about certain sci-fi authors and sci-fi stories, so if you know something, especially that would, like, tie into the types of sci-fi I like, let me know, because I'm always open to, like, exploring new things, especially in, like, genres that I'm not too well versed in. So, anyway, thanks for watching, and I will be back. We have a lot we're going to try to really do this month, because, with Vlogmas coming up and, everything else, and I have, like, 8 billion tags I want to get to, so, yeah, so we should be around more, and hope to see you around. Bye.